This is a picture of an actual lynching. A lot of times these people would be lynched and there would be no cause except for that they were African American. This is Chapter 7, Section 1 and 2, Segregation and Social Tension. What I find really scary is the little boy in the tie in the front row with the big smile on his face. I'm not going to read this, you can do that. I will highlight a few things. For instance, the 15th Amendment guarantees the right to vote, but Southerners got around it with poll taxes. They would charge $1 and $2 to vote. They would also give literacy tests, and there was the grandfather clause. The grandfather clause stated that if your grandfather voted, you could vote, which of course would rule out most African Americans because their grandfathers were slaves. In Plessy versus Ferguson, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of Jim Crow laws as long as separate facilities were equal. In Southern schools in 1915, $14 was spent for each white student and $3 for each black student. Here is a poll tax receipt, $2, and this was in California. There is an Alabama school for blacks built in 1915. This is a modern day photo, so of course it's going to be worn down. But even when it was new, it would not have been much compared to this. The Texarkana High School from Arkansas, built in 1915. This picture of Booker T. Washington. And here is W.E.B. Du Bois. They wanted the same thing, equality for African Americans, but they had very different ways to get there. Ida B. Wells, her book, A Sword Among Lions, campaigning against hanging, lynching, which ironically I would have thought that murder would have been illegal anyway, but no one was charged for murder when someone was lynched. Here's the Chinese school in San Francisco. You can see the skyscraper in the background. This was an all-girls basketball team, and yes, those were the uniforms they played in. Chapter 7, Section 2. Grover Cleveland was known as a man of virtue. Here's a picture of William Boss Tweed. He was the exact opposite of Grover Cleveland.
It was supposed to have cost $350,000. 12 years later, the price tag had reached $13 million and kept right on rising.
Somehow this one building, which is actually quite a nice building, wound up costing more than the entire House of Parliament. Well, you know, the deal was straightforward. We want to buy a lot of chairs. How much does that chair cost? Let's say $5. Now, Mrs. Tweed, you don't mean $5, you mean $50. Oh, I do. All right. You know, give me the chair, $50, you know, 20 back for you, and so forth.
Even the most worldly New Yorkers knew that something had to be done. People begin to tire of holding their noses, George Templeton Strong wrote, and are looking about in a helpless way for some remedy. No caliph, Khan, or Caesar has risen to power or opulence more rapidly than Tweed I. 10 years ago, this monarch was pursuing the humble occupation of a chairmaker. He now rules the state as Napoleon ruled France. There is absolutely nothing in the city which is beyond the reach of the insatiable gang who have obtained possession of it. The New York Times. In 1869, a German-born artist named Thomas Nast, with close ties to the Republican Party, began publishing a series of political cartoons in Harper's Weekly. Week after week, Nast relentlessly excoriated what he called the Tammany Hall ring. There was Peter Brains Sweeney, the city treasurer, Mayor Abraham Oakey Hall, Tweed's puppet in City Hall, Richard Slippery Dick Conway, the comptroller, and Boss Tweed himself, whom Nast depicted as a licentious, balding, overfed monster devouring the city. I don't care a straw for newspaper articles, Tweed declared. My constituents don't know how to read, but they can't help seeing them damn pictures.
He was the object of one of the most successful campaigns by a political cartoonist in history. Thomas Nast really did the most extraordinary job of attacking Tweed and exposing the Tweed ring in Harper's Weekly. Those pictures will live forever. The way you can never separate Nixon from Woodward and Bernstein, you can't separate Tweed from Thomas Nast. They're wed together for the rest of history, I guess.
This is an ad for the gold standard. You can see him standing on a gold coin. It was a push to remove silver as a backing for American currency. They were known as gold bugs, and there's a campaign pin. And then the other push was for silver, known as bimetallism. On the left, you can see the pauper who's begging for money, and the little girl's coming to help him. So there is still poor people, or are still poor people, with bimetallism, with silver backing the dollar. However, if you look on the right, with monometallism, only one gold backing, everybody's poor. And so the little girl who was once rich under silver is now also begging.